Hello and welcome to the Federal. You're watching Off the Beaten Track, and I'm your host of the program, Nilanjan Mukhopadhyay. We are in the middle of elections. They have been called in 5 states for the Vidhan Sabhas or the state assemblies. By the time the results are declared in the first week of December, we would already have started preparing for the parliamentary elections next year, which is going to be announced sometime in February, March, to be held in April, May, so that the entire process is over. And by the first week of June latest, we have the next Lok Sabha in session. Definitely, there's going to be a lot of news from the political players over the next few months. But we must also understand the entire process of holding the elections. The Election Commission of India is constitutionally charged with holding the elections. It is supposed to be an autonomous body appointed from within the government, but then, yes, supposed to be an independent constitutional authority of its own. How much of that remains? How much of the neutrality and the impartiality of the Election Commission remains? What are the major issues that we have to keep an eye on as people who are watching the entire electoral process from outside? Talking to me about all these issues can be no one better than somebody who has been inside but is now outside the system. I have with me Mr. SY Quraishi, who has been a member of the Indian Administrative Service for the entire length of his career before he joined the Election Commission in 2006 and was retired as the Chief Election Commissioner in 2012. So I have Mr. Quraishi with me. Mr. Quraishi, first of all, welcome to the program, and also many congratulations for the latest arrival in the market. You know, it's India's experiment with democracy, the life of the nation through its elections. This is essentially a collection of the various articles which Mr. Quraishi has written over the past several years, primarily on elections and on the Election Commission of India, laws governing it, the politics surrounding elections, all that. So we are going to have a fairly animated and a very exciting and an in-depth conversation with Mr. Quraishi over the next half an hour or so. Welcome to the program, Mr. Quraishi.
Thank you very much.
My first question would be related to the first dictum I heard when I became a journalist sometime in the 1980s. This was actually told to be by the seniors and the editors, that you must remember that dog does not eat dog. That is, a journalist should not be commenting on other journalists. But over the last few years, we have eventually reached a situation where journalists do write and comment about other journalists, because possibly of feeling that a large number of journalists are not actually following the ethics of the profession. After you retired from the Chief Election from the Election Commission in 2012, you had said that you would essentially not speak anything against the Election Commission because people would say that you were there very much a part of it, so why are you speaking against it? But after almost a decade, more than a decade, in fact, 2012 to 2023, it's 11 years, especially after 2019, I read, you saying somewhere, being asked, that has it become more difficult for you after 2019 to defend the Election Commission? Is there any truth in this, that it is actually very difficult to say that the Election Commission as neutral and as impartial as it was, at least during your time? Mr.
I think, Nilanjan, you summed it up very well. I've been extremely wary of commenting on the Election Commission in the negative sense. Positive, definitely. I have been saying that I am self-appointed a spokesman of the Election Commission of India, because most of them in the last 10 years chose to stay away from the media. They kept quiet on issues, whereas they should have been outspoken. They should have held press conferences, in which case certain issues on which there is a public hue and cry or public questioning, So I had to come in. I mean, I was asked. I didn't jump into it. When I was asked to comment on happenings in Indian Election Commission and India's election, I had to comment. But whenever the Election Commission was criticized, I was mostly defending them as an self-appointed ambassador. But the situation came when there were certain questionable decisions for which the Election Commission came under severe attack. And there I had to be very, very guarded in my comments. My standard reply used to be that whenever I hear criticism of the Election Commission, it hurts me no end. And in fact, I passed on the blame to the critics rather than the Election Commission, whose actions are being questioned. But like I see, that's why we have to be above board. Not only Election Commission has to be fair, it has to appear to be fair and all the time. So to say that, we made a statement 4 years ago and that's it, no. If there is a criticism today, you have to reply, and if it is there repeated tomorrow, you have to reply again. So that is the way to, because the more transparent you are, the safer you are. And after all, in 6 years, what we learned, one of the secrets of our success was total transparency. Because people trusted you, the nation trusted you, that whatever this guy is saying is the truth. He's not hiding anything. He's not telling a lie. So with the result, sometimes, after all, when we conduct the elections, we are a huge organization. Normally, we are a small organization, 1,000 people. But for the election, 12 million people. Surely there will be some mistakes here, even some mischief here and there. So, but people forgave us because of our overall credibility. That these guys, the commissioners, have good intention, and somebody must have committed a lapse. So therefore, my comment on election commission were always guarded. I only say that whenever it is criticized, it pains me, it hurts me, because every CEC has contributed to the building of the image of the election commission. Everyone has contributed a brick or two. So at the same time, I keep saying that it takes years for a building to be constructed and seconds to get demolished. How many times on television we have seen 2 years ago in Noida, high-rise buildings were demolished in 30, 40 seconds. So it is difficult to build up reputation, and it's very easy to lose it. And we have to be conscious of it, and we have to guard against it.
Right. We in the media take note of what the Election Commission does during the elections, of course, but we also take note of what it does between elections. Now, as a reader of your columns, I was struck by a piece which you wrote about 2 years ago, which I managed to read once again, courtesy of book. That is it, written in 2021, after a news report appeared that the Prime Minister's office has asked the election commissioners to come and attend a meeting at the PMO, in which you reminded as to the process by which, when you became a member of the Election Commission, that how the entire process happened. That there has to be a degree of separation. And then in that article, you narrated as to how after, Mr. Veerappa Moily, who was the law minister first, he invited you to his office to discuss certain matters. And then you in turn said that it would not be constitutionally proper for you to go to the minister's office for a meeting. Instead, why did the minister not come? So he attended 2 meetings, and thereafter, after the minister was changed, Mr. Salman Khurshid became the next law minister. He also came to the Election Commission. Now, I would want to understand from you as to how you look at this degree of separation between the Election Commission and the executive. That the Election Commission are drawn from the executive, but after becoming part of the commission, they are not. Do you see similar kind of separation existing at the moment, especially after the meeting in 2021?
Well, Constitution provides for that separation. It very clearly says that once appointed, the Chief Election Commissioner at that time, I remember it was a single member institution. So once appointed, Chief Election Commissioner cannot be removed except like a judge of the Supreme Court, that is through process of impeachment. So that is where the wall is built between the government, between the executive and the Election Commission. I was in the IS. I still had one more year to retire. But the day I signed becoming a member of the Election Commission, it is considered deemed retirement. I retired voluntarily 1 year in advance to distance myself from the government. That is the distance which is expected by the Constitution, no less. Therefore, although the government of the day appoints us, but we have to keep an arm's length from the government, and so that we are neutral as we are expected to be. Now, in that context, Veerappa Moily incident is a very, very interesting case. I had been talking of electoral reform to Mr. Moily here and there in various conferences, and one day he called that, Mr. Quraishi, you've been talking of reform. Let's discuss. Why don't you come and have a cup of tea? Now, it was a very, it required extremely quick thinking on my part. 5 seconds, I have to respond to yes or no. So, fortunately, God gave me the wisdom to say the right thing. I said, Moiliji, very kind of you to invite me. But how nice will it be if you come to the Election Commission? I'll introduce you to my colleagues and some new things we are doing and everything. And extremely gracious of him to accept. Yeah. Now he came for the first time in 70 years. The law minister comes to the Election Commission, whereas Mr. Session has written in his book that there was a time when Chief Election Commissioner was sitting outside the minister's office for 2 hours. There was a time when for buying a book of 30 rupees, CEC wrote for permission to the law ministry. There was the time, but they were aberrations. This was totally against the spirit of the Constitution. Now, Mr. Moily came. What we thought is a informal kind of a chat, and which will finish in half an hour, became a 3.5 hour serious meeting. He came with the law secretary, the digital secretary, the advisor. 5 people came from his side, and 8, 9 of us, the three commissioners, 3 of us, and our officers. We had a serious discussion on point by point on every reform. So he said, Mr. Quraishi, I now understand fully the gravity, and I think what we should do is to build public opinion for electoral reform. Okay, we should organize regional conferences countrywide. And how about organizing 7 regional conferences and finally a national conference? Will you cooperate with us? Will you coordinate with us? I said, we'll be very happy because after all, it is our agenda, it is our demand, and we will jointly do it. So we jointly appeared in press conferences. We jointly attended all these 7 meetings I attended personally. So 3 months later, Mr. Moily called me again. He said, Quraishi, all 7 meetings have happened. Now we have to do the national meeting. I've taken a date from the Prime Minister. Now I want to come and discuss with you the arrangement for the national meeting. Now, the precedent had been set. He himself then to discuss the details. He wanted to come to the Election Commission, and he came. Second time in 3 months, second time in 70 years. He came, and then we discussed everything, all the arrangements, the sequence, and to follow him. And unfortunately, immediately thereafter, he was transferred, and Mr. Salman Khurshid became the law minister. So I protested to Dr. Manmohan Singh. I said, Dr. Saab, सर हमने इतने मेहनत की, हमने पूरे हिंदुस्तान में big meetings करके we prepared the ground for electoral reform, and now you have changed the minister. He said, don't worry, Salman will follow it up, and he will do exactly what you want. I'll ask him, he will come and see you. So within 2 weeks, Mr. Salman Khurshid came. Very gracious of him, very sweet of him. So 3 visits of the law minister to Election Commission, because that became the norm. Instead of being sitting outside the law minister's office. So this was it is not of a small significance. So in that context, when I read this news item and I woke up, in Indian Express that PMO has called this meeting and law ministry says that you are expected to attend. I was shocked, horrified. How dare the PMO call the three commissioners? And I gave a parallel. Will they, because they are discussing our agenda of reform? Well, we were discussing our agenda of reform, and law minister of the land came to us. Now, PMO officer, howsoever high and mighty he may be, is after all a bureaucrat. Law minister is far higher and superior. But if he could come, now imagine we are talking of judicial reforms also. Will they say, Chief Justice साहब आप अपनी पूरी बेंच के साथ सारे 34 जजेस आप आ जाइए, हम आपसे आपके रिफॉर्म डिस्कस करने चाहते हैं. Bureaucrats, howsoever powerful, but bureaucrats, how presumptuous. So I protested, and that this is not acceptable. If it is a bureaucratic meeting, we will send our bureaucrats. They know everything. They will hold the fort very beautifully. So some protocol, some nicety, some constitutional requirement has to be understood and honored. So that is how it was, and I wrote that article which you are quoting.
Right. So, the question which arises from what we read or what you hear, from that, do you think the precedent which was set, at the time you were in the election commission, and also the relationship which existed between the government and the commission at that time, is it the same kind of a relationship, or has it, the hierarchy has changed?
No, I really don't know, because what happens, because once we have moved on, what is happening in the election commission, we only know through the media. And if it requires comment, we comment. Otherwise, we really we leave it to them, because after all, the chair on which I sat is the chair on which my seniors had sat, and my junior officers are sitting. They are equally wise, they are equally experienced. It is their wisdom, their experience, their conscience, their backbone. So everyone has a different style. It is up to them to uphold the dignity of the office and the obligation of the Constitution. So one hopes that the present commission is fully conscious of it, because it depends on individual incumbent. There are some aberrations. Some people were questioned, and many are like, why do we talk of Mr. T.N. Session? He was the 10th CEC, but why do we talk of him? Because he did something extraordinary within the same ambit of law, within the same framework of Constitution. He did it, because that is a matter of individual style, individual conscience, and therefore we leave it to the incumbents to chart their own course.
That's right. And I also remember that, many of us in the media were actually extremely critical, and had also written about Mr. M.S. Gill becoming a minister in the UPA government at that time. He recently passed away. So it's not that certain negative things have happened only after a certain period, especially after 2014. There have been big question marks about the functioning of the Election Commission even before, which you reminded. Now, in recent months, there has been, a certain amount of controversy over the manner of the contestation between the Supreme Court and the government over how election commissions are to be appointed, what is going to be seen. There is a pending bill which the government brought, and initially it was planned to be introduced in the special session of Parliament in September. It was not, done at that time, taken up. Possibly it will be taken up at a later point. But this entire issue of appointment of election commissioners, the new bill, what is your assessment of the new bill and the powers that it will vest the government with?
We have been demanding for a long time, for a good 20 years, that election commissioners should be appointed through a system of collegium. Right. Now, we are not new to the collegium system. We already have it. We have a collegium for the judges, but that is a separate kind of a collegium. But for CIC, CVC, who are not constitutional bodies, but statutory bodies, even for them, because of the role they are expected to play, there is a collegium, so that fairness is visible, that they are appointed with acceptance of parties across the board. Now, director of CBI, he is not even a statutory body. He is head of department. And what is head of a department? Director of agriculture is also head of department. Director of animal husbandry is also head of department. The director of CBI is no different, no higher. Only because of the role he plays. The Supreme Court said that because of sensitive nature, even he should be appointed through collegium. So collegium was introduced even for a head of a department. Now the most important, politically and nationally most important constitutional body, the Election Commission, we are appointed unilaterally. I was also a beneficiary of the same system, but at the same time, even being an incumbent CEC, I was demanding that collegium system is a better system. In fact, I still recall, and if you Google, Karan Thapar once interviewed me when I was a CEC. What I thought of the collegium, I said I would have been happier, I would have felt stronger if collegium had selected me. So to make it clear that as his style, he makes you repeat, and he says, "Do I understand correctly? Would you have been happier if the leader of opposition, then Sushma Swaraj, she would have also signed?" I said, "Definitely, because perceptions are important, and that creates a perception that this guy is acceptable to political parties across the board. That is extremely important." So, and not just me, but several of my predecessors and in office have been demanding the same thing. Therefore, now the Supreme Court order in this latest case on a petition which went before the Supreme Court. It's not the suo moto action. I think civil society organization went to them, and Supreme Court said that the Constitution expected that the appointment system, there will be a law, because the article says that the president will appoint anybody um, till a parliament passes an act. So Supreme Court questioned the executive that it is 70 years and you have not passed an act. Therefore, please bring an act in bill in parliament, and till then there will be a collegium. They ordered a standard collegium composition being Prime Minister as chairman, so Chief Justice of India, and leader of opposition. Till then, this will be the collegium. Fortunately or unfortunately, there has been no vacancy till since then, so no occasion has arisen for that collegium to come into play. But government brought this proposal for the bill, which was fortunately not introduced. It has many pluses, let me tell you. Only one or two things which need rectification. Now, the positive thing. Another demand which we have been making consistently, that while the Constitution provides protection from removal to the CEC, the other two are not protected. Right. So which make them vulnerable. They feel on probation, and government can manipulate a strong-headed CEC through these two, because they keep looking over their shoulder. Is the government happy with me? Will they elevate me to CEC or not? Therefore, one can expect that you'll try to please the government. So we have been demanding it. This bill is introducing that protection. So, which is a very good thing. Second thing, it talks of a shortlisting committee, which is a good idea. Shortlisting is a good idea, because I have seen worldwide there are many places where some body shortlist 3 members or 5 members, from which the collegium can select. The only thing is the composition of this shortlisting committee. I commented on that. It is supposed to be headed, if it comes in that form, by the cabinet secretary and 2 secretaries to Government of India. What is wrong with it is that these 3 gentlemen are also potential candidates. Right. And if they are themselves the shortlisting committee, they will be embarrassed to mention their own names. So why debar them from the zone of consideration? Thirdly, after all, they will be nominating 5 names from their colleagues. Their own biases and prejudices may come. Even if there is no bias, they can be accused of prejudice. So therefore, there should be a shortlisting committee. But why not headed by a retired judge, even retired or senior politician, even serving politician? So that will be better, because a shortlisting committee which is going to select somebody who is higher than them, who will be a constitutional body, that itself is a bit strange and anomalous. So just with a little change in the composition, idea of a shortlisting committee is good. Now, one only the downside that we felt was that the bill was proposing downgrading the status of the election commission,
Right.
from Supreme Court judges to cabinet secretary.
Right.
Now, what is the purpose? What is the logic? Was it a deliberate decision, or did it just creep in? Now, I would like to draw attention to the Article 325 of the Constitution, which clearly says, when I mentioned it, that once appointed, CEC cannot be removed except like a judge of the Supreme Court. Now, indirectly, and why indirectly? Almost directly,
It's a direct.
it is a direct equation established that he is equal to a Supreme Court judge. So now, how can you bring him down to a bureaucratic level? Then downgrading this thing will weaken us internationally. We had set up an International Institute of Training in Election Commission. I set up India International Institute of Democracy and Election Management.
Right.
I'm very happy to tell you that in 11 years, 108 countries' election commissioners and top management has come to India for training. India is a wish group in election, and half these commissions have judges. Election commissioners are judges. Now, those we are able to deal with them equally, because we are also equivalent to judges. They are equivalent to judges. So, our equality matters a lot. Suddenly, they will be judges coming to take training from us, and we will be bureaucrats like the cabinet secretary. So, it serves no purpose. In fact, it weakens India's soft power. So I am sure, and I hope and pray that this will be reconsidered, because otherwise positive features are there which nobody is talking about, but they need to be looked at.
You used a very important phrase, while giving your reply, that perception is very important, whether we like it or not, whether we agree or not. There is a general perception that in the last 9 years, especially since 2014 and especially after 2019, the government has tended to be more direct, playing a role of directing the election commission than before. The neutrality appears to have been, at least as far as perception is concerned, appears to have been compromised to a certain extent. There is another very important issue into which you have drawn attention to in your various articles. That is the political development, the main thrust of one of the trends which has happened in the last 9 years is the rise of majoritarian politics in the country. You have very correctly pointed out that the issue of Muslim representation has always existed, less representation than what the Muslim population was there in the population. But it has become politically far more acute. How do you see this issue, and do you see it resonating in elections? And what is the real danger? Is one phrase you use, the idea of India, I'm paraphrasing, that idea of India as you imagine is under threat, is under being targeted.
Yeah, the third section of my book is about facts at a glance, data, very important historical data for various aspects of the election. And one of the tables is about Muslim representation in parliament. And even during the phase of so-called secular parties, Muslims were represented much below their population. If there are 14%, there should have been 14% MPs, but there were only 3%, 4%, 5%, all through 70 years. So that is something we need to look at. Another interesting thing which came out when I was looking at this data from Election Atlas of India by a friend of mine called Dr. R.K. Thukral. It's a huge 10 kilogram atlas. From there, with his permission, he was generous enough to give me all this data about participation of women. I have been saying that women should be given more tickets. But the answer given is that, winnability is an important thing, and women are not able to win elections because their money power is less, their muscle power, gundagardi, they don't have. So how will they win? So, but I had been saying through my book earlier, and now conclusively through this book, last chapter, that actually all through 70 years, the strike rate of women has been much better than of men. Give them 10% tickets and they win 15% seats. So if that has been the trend without fail in the last 70 years, to say that women are not winnable is absolutely wrong. So therefore, now 49% women, 10% or 12% presence in parliament or legislature, even less in many states, is very wrong. And mind you, paradoxically, in the same country, where in the Panchayati Raj Act, we have given them 50% representation. On one hand, we recognize their importance in democracy, and on the other, we are very reluctant to give them the representation. In that context, I very strongly, I think I wrote an article or two also on the latest act which was passed, giving women 33% reservation, which was overdue. I'm so glad that it has happened, and I hope it can be implemented very soon.
From which election it will actually become effective. So that is a big question mark despite passing the law. There is one, as we start moving towards the concluding part of our conversation, there's been one issue which has dogged elections since 1998, 1999. 1999, in fact, is the first time that EVMs were used in a slightly more numbers, during the 99 Lok Sabha elections, and thereafter it increased, and eventually we became completely, the entire election was conducted by the electronic voting machines. Issues remain. One of the major issues which remain, which has been pointed out in one of your articles also, the anonymity of the voter. Now, while the anonymity of the voter remains, the anonymity of the booth has not remained. It is possible for parties to actually keep track of specific booths and to be able to find out that which way did people from this booth vote. And then for a party which is cadre intensive, it is not going to be very difficult to identify that out of 1,000 or 1,200 voters, who voted for us and who did not vote for us. And there are chances of being targeted by the political activists during the elections. What you have talked about, that technologically this was feasible, but then something went wrong. What is it that you are worried about, and what can be done at this stage?
The secrecy of voting is paramount. Right. Individual secrecy is guaranteed, and who you vote for, nobody will know. But collective secrecy of voters is also equally important. For instance, the entire village. Suppose a village has not voted a party, and that party comes to power. I remember hearing a minister from Maharashtra, "Oh, this village did not vote for me, and I'll see how you will get water for the next 5 years." As if it is his personal property that he gives water as charity. So no, this kind of the action should have been taken against that minister. Now this is the point, because there was, before the EVMs were introduced, we had the system of mixing of ballots. Yes. What we did was we drew 10 ballot boxes randomly from here and there, put them in a drum to mix, and then after that we counted them. So that 10 booths, their results were announced, but we never knew which village had voted for whom. So that was the purpose of mixing of the ballots.
Right.
Once we introduced the machine, we should have thought of mixing those votes also, and we devised a machine through our two companies. What is it called?
Totalizing machines or
Uh,
something like that.
Totalizer.
Yeah,
Now, totalizer, that 10 machines are added and their result is jumbled, and from there the results are announced. Now, we wrote to the government for the law ministry for 20 years, and they sat over it, and we kept on reminding them, they never did it. Finally, a parliamentary committee was constituted, and they said, oh, we have examined it. This will be against the national interest. Now, I would like to ask, how will it be against the national interest? This is violating the secrecy of a community, of a village, and whom you threaten to punish. So, but I think we made a mistake. If we had used Article 324 and started using the totalizer ourselves, nobody would have batted an eyelid. We made the mistake of asking the government. The moment you ask the government, there's some undersecretary in the law ministry starts examining, and he starts opposing it, and then the whole process. So this is where all of us and Mr. Session are different, because using the same law, he used the law. The article, now Supreme Court had said very clearly that Article 324 is the extraordinary power, plenary power, and whatever is not mentioned in any other law, wherever the law is silent, Election Commission doesn't have to pray to God for guidance. This 324 empowers them to take any decision. So Article 324 had empowered us to take that decision. At that time, whosoever was the CEC made this mistake of referring it to the government, and result is before you. And I would be very happy if somebody questions it, writes a thesis. How is it against national interest that if secrecy of the voters is protected? How is it against the national interest?
Right.
Because thoughtlessly, they get together, they become repositories of wisdom. Let somebody prove to us that this is against. We used to have secrecy in the ballot paper days. That's it's only the electronic version of voting. So same secrecy should have been carried forward.
Right. So we in the media can definitely make a demand for the totalizer to actually make a comeback and then get introduced in the process of the counting before the EVM machines are separately counted. One last question. We are in the middle of assembly elections. Within few months, we would be having parliamentary elections. At the end of the exercise in May or early June next year, what do you think are the basic prerequisites which the Election Commission has to be very careful for us to come and say, yes, these elections were actually fair and neutral?
Well, the election system is already well established. We are almost on autopilot. 1 million polling booths, 12 million of our staff, they know their job, and how we sort out good officers from bad officers, and giving them insulation from political interference. Everything is in place. So for us, 100% good election is the requirement. 99.9% good election is a bad election for us, because we cannot falter even in 0.001%, because suppose 200 booths we are not able to conduct election, not possible for us to defend it. Yeah, so 100% the good election are expected. The system is in place. Only thing is the perception. Now the whole country watches you. Whether if you're good, they know you. If you are wishy-washy, they know you. If you're deliberately partisan, they know you. If you're spineless, they know you. If you have guts, they know you. People understand. People are not blind. So, and it's a matter of your own conscience and your own character, because Constitution has given you protection. Once appointed, you cannot be removed. So the purpose is that you should show boldness, and that is expected of all of us. If somebody falters, not good for him?
Well, I think it's very well put, Mr. Qureshi, that the entire nation watches you. We hope that the Election Commission will actually keep this home truth in mind at the time of the parliament elections, and also every election that they have to, oversee and, get done to ensure that our democracy continues to be as vibrant and as healthy as it has been in the past. There have, of course, been a few blemishes, and we hope that these blemishes would go. Thank you very much, Mr. Qureshi, for articulating some of the concerns. After having spent so much time, 6 years within the commission, there possibly could not have been somebody better than you to actually look at it slightly sympathetically and also from a critical perspective. Thank you once again, Mr. Qureshi.
Thank you very much.
Subscribe to the Federal's YouTube page for more news and updates.